the pigs, they don't have any chance to devalue their currency or try getting back to business and be competitive again, as you said. What does have to happen in a country such as Spain, where the official unemployment rate has already reached more than 20%, to make the politicians understand that they follow the wrong economic path?
Supposed to work is when you run into problems like that and you're not competitive anymore, your costs are reduced, whether uh, wages come down, real estate prices come down, everything prices come down, and so the countries are then more competitive. The other way, if you have your own currency, of course, has been to devalue
Mm.
or debase your currency, but that too is bad in the long term. You can do it both ways. Reducing your costs is the way to do it if you're going to be long-term competitive. You know that Germany became one of the great success stories of the past 50 years. Well, that's because it wasn't because the Germans went and devalued their currencies. It was because they went and had sound policies, maintained sound labor and every kind of policy, and became one of the great success stories of the past 50 years. That's the way it should be. A devaluation is just a temporary thing. It may help you for a few years, but then you're right back where you started.
Right, but don't you think that the German people, yeah, the German people are told by Mrs. Merkel, yeah, Chancellor Mrs. Merkel, okay, you Germans, yeah, you pay for the Greeks now, and perhaps you pay for the Spanish guys, and so on. Is that fair? Is that correct? Yeah, to
I do not think that anybody should. I would, if I were German, and I'm not, so I cannot tell the Germans what to do. But if I were German, I would be very unhappy about having to pay for a bunch of Greek politicians who went and spent huge amounts of money they didn't have. They lied to the rest of the world about what was going on. They lied to their own citizens. I would feel furious if somebody told me I now had to pay. I mean, if my government came in and said, "Well, Argentina's in trouble, you got to pay for Argentina to save them," I would be furious. I would be furious if any government came to me and said I have to pay for somebody else's mistakes. I do not think that's the way the world should work.
yeah, right, but politicians, they don't ask the people. They don't ask the people, they tell the people, okay, you pay for it, and that's it.
Well,
That,
eventually they have to. I mean, eventually there's an election now. Whether the politicians can fool the people, that's another question. They frequently do.
okay. French franc and the German Deutschmark are listed on the New York Stock Exchange again. What does that mean to you?
They are.
They are.
I didn't know that. I'm very surprised.
Now
Well,
you know.
I'm surprised it's happened already.
Hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me that it's going to happen someday because I do expect the euro to break up someday. But I'm surprised it's happened already.
No, definitely. But what do you think about this? What does it
Well,
tell you?
some entrepreneur thinks that the euro is going to dissolve, sooner rather than later, and so he's just giving people a way to speculate on that.
Okay.
And if you think it's going to break up soon, then maybe that's something you would buy. If you don't think it's going to break up soon, maybe it's something you would sell short.
Okay. Next question. I think that's a question of real personal interest. From time to time, you hear different people saying that some sort of world currency is on its way. Yeah, there was even a program, I think, on Fox News regarding that topic a couple of months ago, explaining to people watching that US dollar should be dumped for a new world currency. Do you believe in those stories?
Well, I cannot conceive that there would be a world currency. There's too many countries and too many societies and too many politicians that would hate that. I said before that the euro is a very wonderful idea, and actually the fewer currencies the better is a good idea because if you think about it, having to change money and change your whole production schedules and everything else because of different currencies, two or three or 500 different currencies in the world, whatever there is not an efficient way to do things. But I cannot conceive that there will ever be a world currency. We've had world currencies before when we had gold, which was used in most parts of the world as a currency, but those periods were very short and not very far and didn't last that long. And then people mainly still, even then, use their own local currencies. I just don't see it happening as a practical matter anytime soon. Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. In this context, I want to ask you another question. From time to time, you hear and also read there's some sort of world government is on the way to be installed. People talk about the so-called Bilderbergers, yeah, pulling the strings in the background. You believe in this, and who should be able and willing to control the whole world, if so?
I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody's smart enough to be able to control the whole world. I know that there are always conspiracy theories, and there have been for thousands of years, but I don't buy them. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I don't think anybody's smart enough that you. If you had conspiracies like that or societies like that, somebody would know. I mean, you couldn't keep it a secret. There have to be hundreds or even thousands of people who would know about it. So I don't buy it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out someday.
That's exactly the case. In one of your latest interviews, I think you said that you don't believe in a forthcoming world war, but that the current geostrategical developments look very threatening. Do you still stick to that opinion?
Well, I don't know if I said I don't. I mean, we've had wars since the beginning of time, and I'm unfortunately we're going to have wars until the end of time. So I don't think I said there's not going to be any wars.
But a world war? World
Well,
War Three.
I'm sure there will be World War III, IV, V, and VI in the next few hundred years. Just because that's the way mankind is. Unfortunately, wars are pretty foolish, but wars are pretty dumb, and nobody's ever won a war. Even the people who win wars, in the end, don't win very much at all. So no, wars have not been good for anything. However, I'm afraid we will always have wars. I hope that none happen for a long time. And even the last World War, as it was called, it was really only a few countries. I mean, it was Europe, Japan, America, and a few countries around the world. But it was hardly a world war. It was called a world war because important countries in the world were in it. But many countries were not involved in that war at all.
I want to come to the situation in Iran. 2 days ago, the news was published that the United States move a big share of their bunker busters to the island Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. I think that's exactly the place where the B-52s and a bunch of stealth bombers are stationed. Those military airplanes could directly fly to Iran without any overflight permissions by other nations. Do you think there's something going on right now in that region? There's plan
I
to
do.
attack.
I have no idea if there's a plan to attack. I do know that various people would love to attack Iran. Apparently, I know there are people in America who would love to. I know there are people in Israel who would love to. Will they do it? I don't have a clue. I read the same things you did about the movements in the Pacific. I have no idea if anything is going to happen or not. I do know there are people who would love to attack Iran. I think it's be madness, insanity to do it, but that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay. If the US declared a war on Iran, where do you think the energy prices would go to in that case? Would oil, natural gas, other commodities go through the roof?
Yeah, of course it would. I have no idea how they would go. It would be a staggering rise in the price of energy, or the staggering price of many things if that happened. Some things might collapse at first, but boy, no, then things would skyrocket.
Okay, that's I think what the CEO of Royal Dutch Shell, Mr. Forzer, said recently in an interview, that the worldwide demand of oil is still very weak and wouldn't get any better in the foreseeable future. I think he mentioned 1-2 years from now. I mean, who's driving the oil prices now? Speculators, hedge funds, or why is oil so expensive?
Well, it's hard for me to say that quote speculators or hedge funds are driving the oil price. I mean, 85 million barrels of oil trade every day, 365 days a year. Not on exchanges, obviously. Exchanges aren't open 365 days a year, but 365 days a year, the world uses 85 million barrels of oil. That is a huge amount of money. If it were just speculators or hedge funds who didn't know what they were doing, the people who had the oil would dump oil on their heads and drown the 29-year-olds. The price of oil is up because there are many people who see that the long-term reserves in the world, oil reserves in the world, are in decline. And so they went and bought oil. Oil is a very valuable thing for the world economy, and people know that we have serious supply problems developing. Now, if you suddenly had a the UK go bankrupt out of the blue or something like that, everything would go down. Everything would collapse for a while. But the basic oil situation worldwide is in decline because the reserves are declining everywhere, nearly everywhere.